Alita, 68, introduces herself as the widow of business mogul Harold Kingston. While her 3 children inherited their father's empire worth $30 million, she received only a dusty envelope at the reading of the will. Her children mockingly suggested it contained divorce papers. Devastated and humiliated, she waited until night to open it alone. Inside was a single sheet with a bank account number and one line. "This is for the woman who always loved me truly." Before I continue my story, let me know where you're watching from and click that subscribe button if you want to hear what happened next. Life has a way of taking unexpected turns. Mine began simply enough in 1975. I was 20 years old working as a waitress at the Bluebird Diner in Millville, New Jersey. The pay was modest, but enough for my small apartment and community college classes. I noticed him immediately the first time he walked in. Harold Kingston wasn't handsome in the conventional sense, but he carried himself with quiet determination. He wore the same slightly worn suit each Tuesday morning when he came in for breakfast. "Coffee black and whatever breakfast special you have today," he'd say with a tired smile. Harold was trying to get his small accounting firm off the ground. Some mornings he'd spread papers across the table, frowning at columns of numbers. I learned to bring his refills without interrupting his concentration. Other mornings, he'd ask about my classes or share stories about his latest client. "One day I'll have more than just myself answering the phones," he told me once. "I've got plans, Alita." Our connection grew naturally. After 3 months of Tuesday breakfasts, he asked me to dinner. I said yes immediately. We went to a small Italian restaurant where the checkered tablecloths had seen better days, but the food was amazing. Harold apologized that it wasn't fancier. "I'd rather be somewhere real with someone genuine than pretending to be something I'm not," I told him. His eyes lit up. "That's exactly how I feel about you, Alita. No pretense." Harold came from money, I discovered. His father owned several car dealerships across the state, but Harold wanted to build something of his own without his father's help or influence. His family didn't approve of his independence, and they certainly didn't approve of me when we started dating seriously. "She's after your inheritance," his mother said during our first and only dinner at their expansive colonial home. She didn't bother lowering her voice. Harold took my hand under the table and squeezed it. "Then she'll be waiting a long time, Mother, because I don't want your money. I'm building my own life." 6 months after we met, Harold proposed. No fancy restaurant, no elaborate setup. We were walking in the park on a crisp autumn day, leaves crunching beneath our feet, when he stopped and turned to me. "I don't have much to offer yet," he said, pulling out a small ring with a modest diamond. "But everything I build from now on, I want to build with you." We married at the courthouse the following month. None of Harold's family attended. My mother and aunt were our only witnesses. The reception was at the Bluebird Diner, where my co-workers decorated the back room with paper streamers, and my boss made his famous apple pie instead of wedding cake. Our first years together were lean but happy. We lived in a 1-bedroom apartment while Harold built his client base, and I finished my associate's degree in business administration. I started helping with the books for his growing firm, working evenings after my regular job. Those nights hunched over the kitchen table with ledgers spread between containers of takeout Chinese food were some of my happiest memories. When I got pregnant with our first child, Amanda, we were ecstatic but terrified. Harold worked even longer hours, determined to provide for our growing family. By the time Amanda was born, he had hired his first employee, a receptionist who could answer calls while he met with clients. "We're on our way, Alita," he whispered as we gazed at our newborn daughter. "This is what it's all for." The twins Jacob and Sophia came 3 years later. By then, Harold's firm had grown to 6 employees, and we had moved to a small rental house with a yard for the children. Harold was developing a reputation for helping small businesses manage their finances effectively. His client list grew steadily. Harold's first major breakthrough came when he landed a contract with a regional grocery chain. Suddenly, his staff expanded to 20 people. We were able to put a down payment on our first house, a modest 3-bedroom in a nice neighborhood with good schools. I took such pride in creating our home, finding secondhand furniture, that I refinished myself planting a small garden in the backyard where the children could help me grow tomatoes and zucchini. On our 10th anniversary, Harold took me to a much nicer restaurant than we could have afforded when we first met. After dinner, he handed me a small box. Inside was a new wedding ring, the diamond considerably larger than my original. "I promised I'd give you more someday," he said, But Alita, I want you to know something. Everything I build, everything I create, it's for our family. For the life we're making together. I treasured those words more than the diamond. As Harold's business continued to grow, I noticed subtle changes in our children. Amanda, at 7, became friends with a girl whose father was a bank executive. She came home asking why we didn't have a swimming pool like her friend. The twins began comparing their birthday parties to the elaborate events held by classmates. I tried to instill the values Harold and I shared: the appreciation for hard work and the understanding that relationships mattered more than possessions. But as Harold's success increased, it became harder to keep the children grounded. They just want what their friends have, Harold would say when I expressed concern. Is it so wrong to give them advantages we didn't have? I couldn't argue with his desire to provide for our children, but something about their growing sense of entitlement troubled me. Still, our life was good. Harold would come home, tired but satisfied, and we'd sit on our back porch after the children were in bed planning for the future, dreaming together. "We're just getting started, Alita," he'd say, his arm around my shoulders as we looked at the stars. "Just wait and see." I believed him completely. How could I have known what was coming? 15 years into our marriage, everything changed. Harold's accounting firm had expanded beyond anything we had imagined, evolving into Kingston Financial Services with offices in 3 states. His client list included several Fortune 500 companies, and his staff numbered in the hundreds. Suddenly, we weren't just comfortable, we were wealthy. Harold insisted we move to Lakeview Estates, an exclusive neighborhood where our neighbors were CEOs, surgeons, and the occasional professional athlete. Our new house was 5 times the size of our first home, with marble floors, soaring ceilings, and a view of the lake from nearly every window. I felt lost in it, like I was staying in a hotel rather than living in my own home. "You'll get used to it," Harold assured me. "You deserve this, Alita. We both worked hard for it." But it wasn't just the house that felt foreign. Our entire lifestyle transformed. The children were enrolled in Westfield Academy, the most prestigious private school in the state. Amanda was 13, the twins 10, and they quickly adapted to their new environment in ways that both impressed and concerned me. I still remember the first dinner party we hosted in our new home. I spent days preparing, wanting everything to be perfect. Harold hired a caterer, but I insisted on making my special apple pie myself, the same recipe I'd served at our wedding reception at the Bluebird Diner. "How quaint," said Marguerite Whitmore, wife of a pharmaceutical executive, when I mentioned I'd baked the dessert. The slight pause before quaint, and the way her eyebrow arched, told me exactly what she thought of my homemade contribution. Later that evening, I overheard her in the powder room, speaking to another guest. "She's trying so hard, poor thing. Harold really should have hired a social consultant for her. She's clearly out of her depth." I stood frozen outside the door, pie server still in my hand. The worst part wasn't the comment itself, but seeing Amanda standing nearby looking mortified that her mother was being discussed this way. Harold's hours grew longer as his business expanded further. He was traveling frequently, sometimes gone for a week at a time. When he was home, he was often distracted, checking emails during dinner, taking calls late into the night. The emotional intimacy we once shared began to fade beneath the weight of his success. "It's just a busy period," he'd say when I tried to talk about it. "Once things stabilize, we'll have more time together." But things never stabilized. There was always a new acquisition, a new client, a new opportunity too good to pass up. Meanwhile, I felt increasingly out of place in our new social circle. The other women talked about their European vacations, their interior decorators, their children's equestrian competitions. My background as a waitress who worked her way through community college wasn't something I was ashamed of, but I quickly learned it wasn't something to mention at charity luncheons. The children began to change in ways that broke my heart. Amanda, once my sweet helper in the kitchen, now rolled her eyes when I suggested baking cookies together. "Mom, nobody bakes anymore," she said. "We have a chef for that." We didn't actually have a chef, just a housekeeper who came 3 times a week, but Amanda had already begun constructing a narrative of our life that matched her classmates' expectations. When parent-teacher night came at Westfield Academy, I wore a new dress I'd bought specially for the occasion. Amanda walked 3 steps ahead of me as we entered the school, barely acknowledging me as her mother. "Who did your hair?" I overheard one of Amanda's friends ask her. "My mother doesn't believe in professional stylists," Amanda replied. with an exaggerated sigh as though I were deliberately depriving her. The truth was, I had offered to take her to the salon that afternoon, but she had declined. Now I understood why. It gave her a story of deprivation to share with friends who competed over whose parents were most generous with their wealth. Jacob and Sophia, always close as twins, developed their own strategy for navigating their new social status. They became intensely competitive not just with others but with each other. Jacob joined every sports team available and pushed himself to excel. Sophia threw herself into social activities, determined to be invited to every important event. "Did you see Jacob's math test?" Sophia asked one evening at dinner. "He only got a 94%. "At least I didn't have to bribe Mackenzie James to invite me to her birthday party," Jacob shot back. "Children, please," Harold said, not looking up from his phone. "We don't talk to each other that way." But we did now, apparently. The warm family dinners where we once shared stories about our day had become battlegrounds for the twins, or silent stretches punctuated only by the ping of Harold's email notifications. One evening, I found a bottle of blood pressure medication in Harold's bathroom drawer. He hadn't mentioned any health concerns to me. "It's nothing," he said when I confronted him. "Just a precaution. Doctor says lots of executives my age take it." "Why didn't you tell me you were seeing a doctor?" I asked. Harold sighed. "I didn't want to worry you over nothing, Alita. You worry too much as it is." "About the family." "Yes, I do. We're drifting apart, Harold. Can't you see that?" He put his hands on my shoulders. "We're just adjusting to our new life. The kids are adapting. You're adapting. I'm adapting. It takes time." I tried to reconnect with Harold, scheduling date nights, surprising him with weekends away. Sometimes I caught glimpses of the man I'd fallen in love with, like when we escaped to a small bed and breakfast in Vermont for our anniversary. Away from the mansion, the staff, the constant demands of his business, Harold relaxed visibly. We went hiking, browsed antique shops, and made love like we used to, with passion and connection rather than the perfunctory intimacy that had become our norm. "I miss this," Harold admitted, as we sat on the porch swing watching the sunset. "Sometimes I miss the old days when it was just you and me figuring things out together." "We can still have that," I said. "The business runs itself now, doesn't it? You have managers, executives." Harold's expression clouded. "It's not that simple, Alita. There's so much at stake now. So many people depending on me." "Your family depends on you too," I said softly. He nodded, squeezing my hand. "I know, and everything I'm building is for you and the kids. I promise you that." I wanted to believe him, but as we drove back to our mansion in our luxury car, I watched the man I loved disappear again behind the mask of Harold Kingston, CEO. 30 years into our marriage, Harold was no longer just successful, he was legendary. Kingston Financial had expanded into Kingston Enterprises, a diversified corporation with holdings in real estate, technology, and international markets. Our net worth was reportedly in the tens of millions, though Harold never discussed the exact figures with me. On the surface, we had everything. Our mansion had been featured in architectural magazines. We were invited to the most prestigious social events. Our children, now adults, all held executive positions within the family business. Amanda, at 31, had married Thomas Blackwell, the son of one of Harold's major competitors. The wedding was an extravagant affair covered by society magazines, more a business merger than a celebration of love. She headed Kingston International, overseeing our foreign investments, with a ruthless efficiency that impressed her father but worried me. Jacob, 28, had become the most like Harold in his drive and ambition, but without the underlying compassion that had always guided my husband's decisions. As COO of Kingston Enterprises, he had developed a reputation for aggressive business tactics, including several hostile takeovers that had made the financial news. "It's business, Mom," he said when I questioned a particularly harsh acquisition that left hundreds unemployed. "Dad understands that sometimes you have to break things to rebuild them better." But I noticed how Harold winced when Jacob boasted about these victories, though he rarely contradicted his son publicly. Sophia, Jacob's twin, had little interest in the day-to-day operations of the business. As the director of Kingston Properties, she technically oversaw our real estate holdings, but in practice, she delegated most responsibilities to her team while she maintained an active social life. Her Instagram account, with its millions of followers, documented her jet-setting lifestyle and rotating cast of celebrity boyfriends. Meanwhile, Harold's health was deteriorating, though he worked hard to conceal it from everyone, including me. I noticed how he occasionally steadied himself against furniture when he thought no one was watching, how he had quietly installed an elevator in our home, claiming it was for convenience, how he sometimes struggled to catch his breath after climbing the few steps to our front door. One afternoon, while looking for a missing earring in Harold's closet, I discovered a locked filing cabinet I'd never noticed before. Curiosity got the better of me, and I found the key hidden in his sock drawer. Inside were financial documents, medical records, and what appeared to be alternative versions of Harold's will. My hands trembled as I read through the papers. There were records of accounts I'd never heard of, properties listed under corporate names rather than our own, and detailed medical reports describing a heart condition much more serious than the minor blood pressure issue Harold had admitted to. My first thought was that he must be having an affair, creating a separate financial life to support another woman. The thought made me physically ill, and I confronted him that evening in his home office. "What is all this, Harold?" I demanded, placing the documents on his desk. "Are you hiding money? Are you planning to leave me?" Harold's face went through a series of emotions: anger at my snooping, resignation, and finally surprising relief. "Sit down, Alita," he said quietly. "I've been wanting to talk to you about this, but I wasn't sure how." What followed was not a confession of infidelity, but something perhaps more shocking. Harold wasn't hiding money from me, he was hiding it from everyone else, including our children. "The business isn't as solid as everyone thinks," he admitted. "We're leveraged to the hilt. The properties, the corporate jets, the vacation homes, they're all mortgaged. One major market downturn and the whole thing could collapse." "But why keep this from me?" I asked. "We've always faced problems together." Harold ran a hand over his face. At first it was just standard business practice, taking risks, expanding quickly. But then I saw how the children were developing their values, their expectations. I realized I'd created monsters, Alita. "Don't say that about our children," I protested. "It's the truth. You've seen it too, I know you have. Amanda cares more about impressing the Blackwells than about the welfare of our employees. Jacob would sell his own brother if the profit margins were good enough, and Sophia treats the company like her personal ATM." I couldn't deny the truth in his words, though it hurt to hear them. "The business image is partly smoke and mirrors," Harold continued. "But I've been quietly moving real assets, liquid cash, into separate accounts, creating a safety net. For the company? For you, Alita? For us." Harold took my hands in his. "I don't trust the children with everything I've built. They think business is about winning at all costs. They've forgotten what you and I always knew, that it's about building something meaningful, something that helps people." The conversation shifted to Harold's health, which was far worse than he'd let on. His heart was failing, and he'd already suffered 2 minor heart attacks that he'd hidden from everyone. "I'm not going to be around forever, Alita. Maybe not even for much longer. And I need to know you'll be taken care of when I'm gone." "I don't care about the money," I said, tears streaming down my face. "I care about you. Why didn't you tell me sooner? We could have spent more time together, traveled, enjoyed life." "Because I'm trying to secure our legacy," Harold said. "Not the Kingston name and lights, but the values we believed in when we started. Honesty, hard work, compassion." In the weeks that followed, Harold and I became confidants again, as we'd been in the early years of our marriage. Late at night, after charity events or business dinners, we'd sit in his office and talk about his plans, his fears, his hopes for the future. The children noticed our renewed closeness but misinterpreted it. I overheard Amanda telling her siblings Mom's probably worried about her portion of the inheritance. She's never understood business, but she understands money well enough. Their lack of concern for Harold's visibly failing health infuriated me, but he urged me to keep peace. "They'll show their true colors soon enough," he said cryptically. One evening, Harold asked me to retrieve something from his personal safe, hidden behind a painting in his office. "The combination is our anniversary," he said with a small smile. Inside, among various documents and family heirlooms, was a dusty envelope with my name written on it in Harold's handwriting. "What's this?" I asked. "Insurance," Harold replied. "Promise me something, Alita. When the time comes, when the will is read, no matter what happens, remember that I love you. That everything I've done has been for us, for what we built together." I promised, not understanding the full meaning of his words. How could I have known what was coming? The call came on a Tuesday morning. Harold had collapsed during a board meeting. By the time I reached the hospital, he was in intensive care, doctors working frantically to stabilize him after a massive heart attack. I called the children immediately. Amanda was in London on business and said she'd catch the next flight, though she spent most of the call asking which executives had been present at the meeting and what had been discussed before Harold collapsed. Jacob was in New York but said he needed to tie up some loose ends before flying back. When I pressed him on the urgency, he replied, "If Dad's already in the hospital, a few more hours won't make a difference. The doctors know what they're doing." Sophia at least was local, but she was at a spa retreat and didn't answer her phone until late afternoon. "Is it serious?" she asked when I finally reached her. "I have dinner with the Aston Martins tonight." Dad would understand the importance of that connection. I sat alone beside Harold's bed, watching the machines breathe for him, remembering the young man in the slightly worn suit who had spread papers across a diner table and shared his dreams with a waitress. The doctors were not optimistic. The heart attack had been severe, and Harold's previously damaged heart might not recover. All I could do was hold his hand and talk to him, hoping somewhere in his unconscious mind he could hear me. "Remember our first apartment," I whispered. "How the radiator used to clank all night in the winter. You wrapped it in towels so it wouldn't wake me. You've always taken care of me, Harold. Always put me first, even when I didn't realize it." Late that night, something changed. The monitors showed increased brain activity. Harold's fingers twitched in mine and his eyes fluttered open briefly. "Alita," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Remember the envelope." Those were his last words to me. By morning, Harold Kingston, financial titan, and my partner of 35 years, was gone. The funeral was an elaborate affair, more of a public spectacle than a personal farewell. Business associates, political figures, and celebrities all came to pay their respects to the Kingston legacy. I sat in the front row with our children, feeling oddly detached from the proceedings, as though watching a play about someone else's life. The children had taken charge of the arrangements, overriding my preferences for a smaller, more intimate service. Amanda had hired a PR firm to manage media coverage. Jacob had arranged for business partners from around the world to deliver eulogies. Sophia had selected the ornate casket and massive flower arrangements that now surrounded us. Not one of them had asked what Harold might have wanted. The tension began building immediately toward the reading of the will. In the days between the funeral and our appointment with Mr. Davidson, Harold's longtime attorney, the children grew increasingly solicitous toward me. "You'll be so lonely in that big house," Mother Amanda said over coffee. "Perhaps you'd be more comfortable in a smaller place. I know of several lovely retirement communities." Dad would want us to continue his vision for the company, Jacob told me repeatedly. "We need to present a united front to the board and shareholders." "I've always admired your jewelry collection," Sophia mentioned casually, "especially the pieces Dad gave you for your anniversaries. Such sentimental value." The day of the will reading arrived, and we gathered in the formal conference room of Davidson, Pierce and Associates. Mr. Davidson, who had been Harold's friend as well as his attorney for 20 years, seemed unusually somber as he organized his papers. "Before we begin," he said, "I want to express my personal condolences to you, Alita. Harold was not just a client but a dear friend." The children shifted impatiently in their leather chairs, eager to get to the substance of the meeting. "Let's proceed with the reading of Harold Kingston's last will and testament." Mr. Davidson continued, putting on his reading glasses. What followed was both expected and shocking. The business holdings, diversified across multiple industries and worth approximately $30 million, were divided among the children according to their areas of responsibility. Amanda received full control of Kingston International, including offices in London, Tokyo, and Singapore. Jacob was given the main company, Kingston Enterprises, with its technology investments and manufacturing divisions. Sophia got Kingston Properties, the real estate portfolio that included office buildings, retail spaces, and luxury apartments across the country. Additionally, each child received one of the family's vacation properties, a collection of art and antiques, and several vehicles from Harold's luxury car collection. Throughout the reading, I sat quietly waiting for my portion to be addressed. The mansion where we had lived for the past 20 years, our primary residence, was assigned to Jacob, though I was permitted to remain in residence for a period not exceeding 30 days. As Mr. Davidson continued through various smaller bequests to charities and longtime employees, I felt a growing sense of disbelief. My name had not been mentioned except in reference to temporary accommodation. Finally, after nearly an hour, Mr. Davidson cleared his throat and said, "And to my beloved wife Alita Kingston, I leave the contents of envelope B to be delivered to her immediately upon the reading of this will." The silence in the room was deafening. The children exchanged glances of barely concealed triumph. Mr. Davidson reached into his briefcase and withdrew a dusty, unmarked envelope, identical to the one I had seen in Harold's safe weeks earlier. "This is all I asked," my voice sounding strange to my own ears. "I'm afraid." "So, Mrs. Kingston," Mr. Davidson replied, not meeting my eyes as he handed me the envelope. "The contents of envelope B constitute your entire inheritance under the terms of the will." Amanda was the first to break the uncomfortable silence. "Well, Mother, I'm sure Dad had his reasons. Perhaps there's a generous settlement inside." Or perhaps, Jacob added with a smirk, "their divorce papers he never filed. Everyone knows you two were basically separated for years." "Jacob," Sophia exclaimed, though her tone held more delight than reproach. "That's no way to speak to Mom. I'm sure Dad left her something appropriate." I clutched the envelope, feeling the weight of their mockery and my own humiliation. 35 years of marriage, of supporting Harold through the building of his empire, of raising his children, and my worth was reduced to a single envelope. "Is there anything else, Mr. Davidson?" I asked, struggling to maintain my composure. "That concludes the official reading," he confirmed. "There are, of course, many details to be worked out regarding the transfer of assets, but the major provisions have been covered." I rose unsteadily to my feet. "Then I'll take my leave. Congratulations, children. You've gotten what you wanted." "We'll have movers come to help you pack," Mother Amanda called after me as I walked toward the door. "No need to concern yourself with the heavy lifting." I left the attorney's office alone, declining the family driver who waited outside. Instead, I walked 3 blocks to the bus stop and rode home like an ordinary widow, clutching a dusty envelope and fighting back tears. The mansion that had never quite felt like home now felt actively hostile. I wandered through rooms filled with expensive furniture chosen by decorators, past artwork, selected for investment value rather than beauty, and felt nothing but emptiness. 35 years reduced to 30 days. Where would I go? What would I do? I had no family left except for the children who had just revealed how little they valued me. My parents had passed years ago. My few genuine friends had drifted away as Harold's success had propelled us into different social circles. The envelope sat on my bedside table untouched. Part of me wanted to rip it open immediately to know the worst. Another part dreaded whatever final message or pittance Harold had left me. My phone began ringing almost immediately. Amanda first, her voice brisk and businesslike. "Mother, I've taken the liberty of having my assistant research some apartment options for you. Nothing too expensive, of course, but clean and safe. You'll need to start downsizing immediately. 30 days goes by quickly." Before I could respond, she continued. "Also, the board wants to issue a press release about the transition of leadership. We need to present a united front. I've drafted a statement for you expressing your full confidence in our ability to carry on Harold's legacy." "I haven't read it," I said quietly. "How can I endorse it?" Amanda's sigh crackled through the phone. "This isn't the time for you to suddenly take an interest in the business, Mother. Just sign where my assistant indicates when she emails it over." Jacob called next, his tone falsely solicitous. "Mom, I've been thinking about your situation. I know 30 days isn't much time to relocate. I have a small apartment building in the city. Nothing fancy, but I could let you have a 1-bedroom. Consider it charity." "Charity," I repeated, the word burning in my throat. "Well, let's be honest. You're not exactly in a position to pay market rate rent, are you? Unless that envelope contains a winning lottery ticket." He laughed at his own joke. Sophia's call came during dinner, a meal I could barely touch. "Mom, I need to come by tomorrow to look through your jewelry collection. The family heirlooms should really stay with the family, don't you think? Especially Grandmother Kingston's pieces. They should go to her blood relatives." I nearly choked on my water. "Sophia, those were gifts from your father to me. They're not family heirlooms." Well, technically everything is family property now, isn't it? And since you're not really a Kingston by blood, she let the implication hang in the air. After that call, I sat alone in the darkened living room, staring at the envelope I had brought downstairs with me. Outside rain began to fall, pattering against the floor-to-ceiling windows. The house felt cavernous and cold. This was what 35 years of love and devotion had earned me: an envelope and 30 days' notice. With trembling fingers, I finally opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. No heartfelt letter, no explanation, no apology, just a bank account number and one line written in Harold's distinctive handwriting. "This is for the woman who always loved me truly." I stared at it, confused and hurt. What game was Harold playing? Was this some kind of cruel joke? Or perhaps a small account with enough money to rent a modest apartment for a few years? I decided to visit the bank first thing in the morning. There was no point in speculating about Harold's final message to me. Whatever was in that account, I would face it and begin rebuilding my life somehow. Sleep eluded me that night. I lay awake thinking about our life together, the early struggles, the middle years of growing success and growing distance, the final weeks when Harold and I had reconnected over his secret plans. Had that all been a lie too? Had he been playing me, preparing me for this final betrayal? The next morning, I dressed carefully in one of my simpler outfits, a navy blue dress and low heels. No point in flaunting wealth that was no longer mine. I took public transportation to the address, listed on the account information a discreet private banking facility in the financial district. The reception area was hushed, all marble and mahogany. I approached the desk uncertainly. "I need to inquire about an account," I said, presenting the paper from the envelope. "I'm Alita Kingston." The receptionist's professional demeanor changed instantly. "Mrs. Kingston, we've been expecting you. Please come this way immediately." I was led to a private office where an older gentleman in an impeccable suit rose to greet me. "Mrs. Kingston, I'm Walter Simmons, Senior Private Client Manager. Please accept my condolences on your husband's passing. Mr. Kingston spoke of you often and with great affection." "You knew Harold personally?" I asked, taking the offered seat. "For nearly 20 years," Mr. Simmons confirmed. "I've managed this particular account since its inception. Mr. Kingston was most explicit about its purpose and the protocol to be followed upon his death." He took the account information I offered and entered it into his computer. "Yes, everything appears to be in order. I'll need to verify your identity, of course, but that's a mere formality." After checking my identification, Mr. Simmons turned his computer screen toward me. "Mrs. Kingston, this is the current balance of your account." I stared at the number on the screen, certain I was misreading it. There must be some mistake. "No mistake," Mr. Simmons assured me. "The balance is $45 million, all in highly liquid assets. Additionally, there are securities and investment portfolios worth approximately another $20 million, though those values fluctuate with the market, of course." $45 million, more than the entire business empire the children had inherited. "I don't understand," I whispered. "The business, the properties." "If I may, Mr. Simmons," said, retrieving a sealed envelope from his desk. "Mr. Kingston left this letter to be given to you upon your first visit to the bank. It may answer some of your questions." With shaking hands, I opened this new envelope and began to read. "My dearest Alita, if you're reading this, then I'm gone and the will has been read. I imagine you're confused and hurt by what appeared to be a cruel final act from a husband who promised to care for you always. Let me explain. The business empire our children have inherited is built largely on debt appearance and market confidence. The properties are mortgaged, the company leveraged. It's not worthless, but it's nowhere near as valuable as everyone believes. One market downturn, one scandal, one bad decision, and it could all collapse. The real wealth, the true security I've been building quietly in this account for you. Every major deal, every successful investment, I skimmed the cream off the top and placed it here where it would be safe from both market volatility and our children's increasingly troubling values. I wanted to see what they would do when faced with what appeared to be an unjust will. Would they protect their mother, share their inheritance, show compassion and family loyalty, or would they reveal the people they've truly become? I'm sorry for putting you through this test, but it was necessary. Not just for them, but for you. You've spent decades making excuses for their behavior, seeing the best in them, even when evidence of their true character was staring you in the face. There's one more thing you should know. While the children believe they have full control of their inherited companies, the truth is more complicated. You are actually the majority silent shareholder in all 3 major divisions of Kingston Enterprises. Mr. Simmons has the documentation. The choice of what to do with this knowledge and power is yours. You can remain silent, living comfortably on your private fortune while the children run the companies into the ground. You can reveal yourself and take control. You can sell your shares and walk away completely. Whatever you decide, know that I have loved you truly. From that first morning you poured my coffee at the Bluebird Diner. Everything I built for us. I'm sorry for the times I lost sight of that, for the years I allowed success to come between us. All my love, always, Harold. I looked up from the letter to find Mr. Simmons watching me with kind eyes. There's a considerable amount of additional documentation, he said gently. Legal papers establishing your ownership position, instructions for accessing all accounts, details of the various investments. We can go through it at your pace whenever you're ready. The children, I said, my mind still reeling. They have no idea. No one knows except myself, Mr. Davidson, and now you. That was Mr. Kingston's explicit instruction. The information was to be revealed only to you, and any further disclosure would be entirely at your discretion. I sat back in my chair, $45 million, and controlling interest in a business empire suddenly at my disposal. Harold's final gift wasn't just financial security. It was the truth, and with it the power to decide what happened next. For several days after my meeting at the bank, I remained in the mansion, processing everything I had learned and considering my options. The children, meanwhile, accelerated their plans to claim their inheritance. Amanda called to inform me that she needed to host international clients at the mansion the following week. We'll need you to finish packing by then, Mother. The house needs to be presented properly, and your personal items will create clutter. Jacob sent a property management company to assess the mansion without bothering to inform me they were coming. When I objected to strangers wandering through my bedroom, the manager informed me that Mr. Kingston had authorized the inspection. I'm still legally resident here, I pointed out. For now, the manager replied with a barely concealed smirk. Sophia arrived with 2 assistants and began photographing artwork and furniture. I'm cataloging the pieces for insurance purposes, she explained, and deciding what goes where after you leave. When she reached my jewelry box, I finally put my foot down. Those were gifts from your father. They're mine. Actually, Sophia said studying a diamond bracelet Dad's will specified that family assets would be divided among his heirs, since you only got the envelope. Get out, I said quietly. Excuse me, Sophia looked up startled. Get out of my room. Get out of my house. Now. Her surprise quickly turned to indignation. This isn't your house anymore, Mother. And frankly, your attitude isn't helping anyone. We're trying to make this transition as smooth as possible. Out, I shouted, surprising even myself with the force of my voice. Sophia retreated, taking her assistants with her, but not before muttering something about mental stability and grief counseling. After she left, I contacted Mr. Davidson, who confirmed what I already knew from the documents Mr. Simmons had provided. While the children had operational control of their respective divisions, my majority shareholding gave me ultimate authority. Additionally, there were clauses in the corporate structure that would activate upon disclosure of my ownership position, giving me veto power over major decisions. Harold designed it brilliantly, Mr. Davidson admitted. The children believe they've inherited an empire, but they're essentially managing it on your behalf until you decide otherwise. I also learned that the business was indeed in trouble, just as Harold had warned. Without his leadership and relationship management skills, key clients were considering taking their business elsewhere. Jacob had already fired several longtime executives who had been loyal to Harold, replacing them with his own aggressively ambitious allies. Amanda was in discussions to sell off the Asian division of Kingston International to generate quick cash, unaware that such a move would require majority shareholder approval, which she didn't realize was me. Sophia had already taken out an additional mortgage on 2 of the most valuable properties in her portfolio, using the funds to finance a lavish yacht purchase that had nothing to do with company business. I decided it was time for a family meeting. Under the guise of discussing my imminent departure from the mansion, I invited all 3 children to dinner, suggesting they bring their spouses as well. Amanda's husband, Thomas Jacob's wife, Veronica, and Sophia's latest boyfriend, Ryan, rarely attended family functions, preferring to maintain distance from what they considered the boring side of the Kingston connections. To everyone's surprise, I insisted on cooking the meal myself, dismissing the caterers Jacob had arranged. "Mom's having some kind of breakdown," I overheard Sophia telling her siblings when they arrived. "Let's just humor her and get this over with." I had prepared a simple but delicious meal reminiscent of our family dinners from the early days before wealth had changed everything. A roast chicken, mashed potatoes, fresh vegetables from the farmer's market, and for dessert apple pie made with my old recipe from the Bluebird Diner days. The conversation during dinner was strained, with the children making thin attempts at politeness while exchanging meaningful glances. Their spouses looked bored and checked their phones frequently under the table. Only Thomas, Amanda's husband, made any real effort asking about my plans after leaving the mansion. "I'm not sure yet," I replied honestly. "So much has changed so quickly." "We've all had to adapt to new circumstances," Mother Amanda said. "The business requires our full attention right now. Dad left quite a mess behind the scenes, actually." "Did he?" I asked, serving the apple pie. "I'd like to hear more about that." Jacob jumped in, clearly eager to demonstrate his business acumen. The company was over-leveraged. Dad was keeping up appearances, but the fundamentals weren't as solid as everyone thought. "We're having to make tough decisions to right the ship." "Like firing people who worked with your father for 20 years, I asked. Jacob shrugged. "Dead weight. We need fresh blood, new perspectives. And mortgaging properties to buy personal yachts." I looked at Sophia. "Is that part of the business strategy too?" Sophia nearly choked on her wine. "How did you know about that?" "I know a great many things," I said calmly, placing my napkin beside my plate. "For instance, I know that Kingston International can't sell its Asian division without majority shareholder approval." "That's just a formality," Amanda said dismissively. "The board will rubber stamp it." "No," I corrected her. "The majority shareholder will need to approve it. And the majority shareholder declines." A confused silence fell over the table. "What are you talking about?" Mother Amanda finally asked. "The company shares were divided in the will. None of us holds a majority individually." I rose and walked to the sideboard, where I'd placed a folder of documents from my meetings with Mr. Simmons and Mr. Davidson. "Your father's will distributed operational control of the companies. The actual ownership is a different matter entirely." I handed each of them copies of the relevant documentation. "As you can see, I hold 51% of the shares in each division of Kingston Enterprises. I am effectively your boss." The stunned silence was broken by Jacob's harsh laugh. "This is a joke, right? Some kind of fake document you've created to feel important." "Mr. Davidson has the originals on file," I replied. "As does the corporate registry office. Feel free to verify." Thomas, to his credit, had already scanned the documents with a businessman's practiced eye. "These appear legitimate, Amanda. If they are your mother controls the company." "That's impossible," Amanda protested. "The will clearly stated." "The will gave you operational control, sweetie," I interrupted. "But your father left me ownership. There's a difference." "But the envelope," Sophia began, "contained the key to a bank account holding $45 million I finished for her, along with instructions regarding my majority shareholding position." The reactions around the table ranged from shock to disbelief to calculating reassessment. Jacob's face had turned an alarming shade of red, while Amanda seemed frozen in place, her fork suspended halfway to her mouth. Sophia looked like she might faint. "So you've been playing us," Jacob finally sputtered. "Letting us believe you were destitute while secretly holding all the power." "No, Jacob. Your father was testing you," I corrected him. "He wanted to see how you would treat me when you thought I had nothing, when you believed I was vulnerable and at your mercy." I looked at each of them in turn. "And you all failed that test spectacularly. Not one of you showed an ounce of compassion, respect, or family loyalty. You mocked me, dismissed me, and couldn't wait to push me out of your lives." "That's not fair," Amanda protested weakly. "We offered you an apartment." As charity, I reminded her. "Your words, Jacob, not mine. And you, Amanda, couldn't even be bothered to help me find a place yourself. You delegated it to an assistant. And Sophia, you tried to take the jewelry your father gave me as symbols of his love. We were busy with the transition, Sophia defended. It's been chaotic. Too busy to show basic human decency to the woman who raised you. Too busy to offer comfort to your mother, who had just lost her husband of 35 years. None of them could meet my eyes. Your father built his business on relationships, on trust, on his word being his bond, I continued. He took care of the people who worked for him. He valued loyalty. He never forgot where he came from, or the people who helped him along the way. I closed the folder and returned to my seat at the head of the table, a position I had never occupied before. Harold had always sat there with me at his right hand. Now, the symbolism of taking his place was not lost on any of us. So what happens now? Thomas asked, the only one clear-headed enough to get to the practical implications. Are you taking over the company? That depends, I said, looking at my children, on whether there's anything worth salvaging not just in the business but in this family. 6 months after that fateful dinner, I sat on the porch of my new home, a comfortable 4-bedroom house in a pleasant neighborhood not far from where Harold and I had lived during the early years of his success. It wasn't a mansion, but it was warm and welcoming, filled with furniture I had chosen myself and photographs that told the story of a life well lived. The Kingston Family Foundation, which I had established with a significant portion of Harold's secret fortune, was already making an impact. We provided grants, mentorship, and resources to struggling entrepreneurs, particularly those from backgrounds similar to Harold's and mine, people with dreams bigger than their current circumstances. The business Harold had built was transforming as well. I had installed new management professionals with both expertise and integrity while maintaining oversight as chairwoman of the board. Quarterly profits were down initially as we unwound some of Jacob's more aggressive tactics and Amanda's hasty international decisions, but customer retention had improved dramatically, and employee satisfaction scores were the highest they'd been in a decade. The children's responses to their new reality had varied dramatically. Amanda, after an initial period of resentment and resistance, had been the first to adapt. Always the pragmatist, she recognized that fighting me would be futile and potentially damaging to her own long-term interests. She had approached me after 2 months of silence with a proposal to restructure Kingston International, addressing the very issues Harold had been concerned about. I've been thinking about what Dad would have wanted, she admitted during our first civil conversation since the revelation. He built relationships, not just deals. I think I lost sight of that somewhere along the way. I gave her a chance to prove herself, maintaining close supervision, but allowing her to implement her new vision. She was still Amanda, ambitious and driven, but I began to see flickers of reflection and consideration that hadn't been there before. Jacob had taken the hardest line hiring attorneys to challenge the will and the share distribution. The legal battle had been brief and decisive, with Mr. Davidson presenting irrefutable documentation of Harold's intentions and actions. After losing in court, Jacob had spiraled, drinking heavily and making wild accusations at industry events. The wake-up call came when Veronica left him, tired of his self-destructive behavior and diminishing social status. Alone and finally forced to confront himself without the buffer of wealth and power, Jacob had checked into a therapy program. Our relationship remained strained, but last week he had called to ask if we could meet for coffee. It was a small step, but a step nonetheless. Sophia's journey had been the most surprising. After the initial shock wore off, she had approached me with an unexpected request. "I want to learn," she said simply. "I've never really understood the business. I just took what Dad gave me and pretended to manage it. I want to know how it actually works." She had enrolled in business classes at the local university and begun shadowing the property management team 2 days a week. Her Instagram posts became less frequent, her designer wardrobe less prominent in her daily life. She still enjoyed luxury and beauty, but she was developing substance beneath the style. The family was healing slowly and imperfectly. We had begun gathering for monthly dinners, sometimes at my house, sometimes at a restaurant. The conversations were guarded at first, but gradually became more genuine. We would never be the idealized family I had once dreamed of, but we were finding a new way to relate to each other, built on clearer eyes and honest assessments. The most fulfilling aspect of my new life was the foundation work. I loved meeting with young entrepreneurs, hearing their ideas, their struggles, their hopes. One couple in particular reminded me powerfully of Harold and me in our early days. Lisa and Marcus had a small accounting firm specializing in helping immigrant-owned businesses navigate American tax laws. Their passion for their work, their dedication to their clients, and their obvious affection for each other brought tears to my eyes during their grant interview. "We don't just want to grow for growth's sake," Marcus explained. "We want to help people build security for their families to understand the system so they can thrive in it." They received the foundation's first major grant, along with mentorship from experienced business advisors. Watching their progress felt like witnessing Harold's legacy continuing in the way he would have truly wanted. On what would have been our 40th anniversary, I visited Harold's grave, bringing a bouquet of daisies, his favorite flower, despite their simplicity, or perhaps because of it. "You were right about so many things," I told him, sitting on the small bench beside his headstone. "About the children, about what matters in the end. Your final gift wasn't the money, it was the truth." Painful as it was, we needed it, all of us. I had learned that wealth itself wasn't the problem. It was what you did with it, how you related to it. Harold had lost his way for a time in the middle of our journey together, but in the end, he had found his way back to the values we had started with. The children were learning too, at their own pace. Last Christmas, our first holiday after everything had changed, had been awkward but not hostile. This year, Amanda had already asked if she could host at her house, which she had downsized to after her divorce from Thomas, who had shown his true colors once her financial situation changed. Jacob was bringing a new girlfriend to dinner next week, someone he had met in his support group, a widow who had lost her husband to the same heart condition that had taken Harold. "She doesn't care about the Kingston name," he had told me, wonder in his voice. "She just likes me for me." Sophia had started a small side business, renovating affordable housing units, applying her eye for design to spaces that would normally never receive such attention. "Everyone deserves beauty in their home, Mom," she had said. "That's something I think I always knew but forgot somewhere along the way." As for me, I had found purpose and peace. The envelope that had seemed like a final insult had become the doorway to a new chapter 1, where I was neither just Harold Kingston's wife nor just the Kingston children's mother, but Alita, a woman with her own strength, wisdom, and contribution to make. Each morning, I reviewed applications for the Foundation's next grant cycle. Each afternoon, I met with the business executives or spent time with friends, real friends who valued me for myself. Each evening, I sat on my porch and watched the sunset, grateful for the journey that had brought me here. Love, I had learned, was indeed the only inheritance that truly mattered. Not just receiving it, but giving it. Not just claiming it, but living it. Harold's final message, "This is for the woman who always loved me," truly wasn't just about the money. It was his acknowledgement that through all our years together, through wealth and distance and reconnection, love had been the constant current running beneath the surface of our lives. What do you think about family inheritance? Have you ever experienced a situation where money changed how people treated you? Let me know in the comments below. If this story touched your heart, please give it a like and subscribe to hear more stories of unexpected turns and valuable life lessons. Remember, true wealth isn't measured in dollars, but in the love we give and receive. Thank you for listening, and may your own journey be filled with authentic connections and genuine love.